Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror film from France, French language English subs, released in the year 2002, directed by Eric Valletta, and this film is called Malefique. So Malefique is set in a prison. You've got this main character who's been condemned for a few years. He doesn't want this. He wants to see his young son more than anything, so he wants to try and escape. So he meets with his new cellmates. He's got three of them. He's got an elderly man, a transvestite, and a simple man. So they're all very strange, larger-than-life people, but they all share the same desire to actually escape. And so they're trying to come up with a way, and all options are exhausted until they come across a loose brick in the wall. Now, when they take this loose brick out, they realise that there's a book behind it. Now, this book is said to have been written by a prisoner many years previous, and he actually used his book as magic to escape. And so the cellmates, they're very sceptical about this. They believe it won't work, but they think, why not give it a shot? And when they actually delve into the book, strange things start to happen that indicate maybe this prisoner really did escape, and maybe this is their opportunity to actually follow in his footsteps. But unfortunately, with this book comes dire consequences, and so whether or not they can actually escape is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, my thoughts on Malefique. I actually reviewed this movie a long time ago on a horror collaboration channel called The House of Horror, but I realised I hadn't actually reviewed it for my channel. So it's been a long time since I watched this movie. It was a long time since I reviewed it, so I thought definitely going to give it a second shot and see if this is a movie that can relive really good memories. But from memory, I wasn't overly impressed with this movie, and so I thought, okay, well, maybe that was the reason why it kind of went under my radar when it was the French horror boom. You guys know that I love French horror, and when the new wave of French horror came out, all of these movies were just so impressive, but Malefique was definitely one of them that stood in the background. It wasn't because I wasn't interested, but it just didn't have that same sort of hype surrounding films like Inside, Martyrs, High Tension, Frontiers, all those kinds of movies that really put French horror on the map. And so Malefique was definitely one of these forgotten films, and I thought, alright, well, hopefully this is a movie that's going to really indicate the good times that this period of French horror was. But after watching the movie, I will say that it is very interesting. Production-wise, it is very strong. I thought the overall atmosphere was very dreaded, and it was very tense, and it was very claustrophobic. And I think that the low budget to this movie, it's not shown because it's very intelligently made. This is a movie that takes place in one setting, and that one setting can be a negative, which is something to go into a little bit later, but the positive is that this movie never shows its limitations. The movie always has one step ahead in actually limiting the cheap value of the movie. Is that, alright, well, this is a movie that is like a stage play, and it's the centre of the universe, this prison cell, and this prison cell is basically turning into hell. As they read this book, this prison cell is getting smaller and smaller, and it's just a psychological battlefield, and that psychological battlefield was extremely uncomfortable, and the discomfort to the film is intensified through the very quirky characters, and the main character is a very realistic sort of person, and he's the vessel that you can really relate to, but then the other characters are larger than life, and they're very surreal, and it's almost like they're manifestations of this man's desperation, this main character's desperation. And the movie does have a little bit of interpretation where maybe you can interpret that. Is that, alright, the transvestite, his partner, which is the simple man, and the old man, they have these characteristics and attributes that I just couldn't put my finger on why I was very uncomfortable. And so I thought, alright, maybe they are manifestations, and it's that type of movie that will have that thought-provoking material, especially concerning this book. And the movie does have a very strong message at the end, which I'm not going to give away, but I thought, alright, well, this is a movie that hits you on a very psychological base. And I thought the atmosphere was very tense. There are some very gruesome moments, which is something that's a trademark of French horror, which is something I really appreciate. And I thought the characters, as I said, they're larger than life, but they're very interesting. And so they have very vague sort of rundowns on who they are, but you want to know more, and so that keeps you captivated as to what's going on. And so what did this main character do in order to go into jail, and so was he ever going to see his son again? So there's a lot of questions there that beg answering, and ultimately you need a movie that asks questions, and basically the answers is what captivates you to actually make you want to sustain that interest. And if you don't have any questions and no answers, then it becomes a very boring experience. So Eric Valletta actually creates something that is, as I said, very good to look at, and it's also something to think about. And so I thought the level of curiosity to this film was very mysterious, as the overall visuals to the film make it just feel that very claustrophobic. So it's an incredibly uncomfortable film, and to splash some pretty good gore effects in this film for good measure, it's a fairly nasty film, which I thought was a good reward for actually sustaining that build-up. And so Yeah, it's a very tense and claustrophobic environment that Eric Valletta creates, but unfortunately I think that, alright, on one hand the one setting works in its favour, but on the other hand the one setting, it feels like a stage play, therefore it feels like a movie that's not really going to splash you as far as a big cinema screen is concerned. It's not a movie that has that wow factor. It's not a movie like Inside, Martyrs, High Tension and Frontiers. It just doesn't have that lasting quality because it does feel like a made-for-TV film. And the vague sort of characters in this movie, it does become a little bit frustrating because you've got a template there to make something really, really interesting, but the director doesn't allow you to know these people to the full extent. And because it doesn't know to the full extent, I thought there was some unused potential in this movie that could have elevated it and snowballed it into an even better film. And so it just doesn't have the X factor and the wow factor that a lot of French horror films do, and this is probably the reason why it went unnoticed. And so I just think that not only the characters are a little bit vague, but the overall story, I just thought it was playing it safe to some degree, and it just, yes, there are some pretty gruesome moments and there's thought-provoking moments, but everything's a little bit vague, and it doesn't really go into the guts and glory enough to really make you feel as though you had that really rewarding experience. It's an experience that you're probably going to forget in a few days' time. And so as far as French horror is concerned, this is one of the more disposable horror films, but if you watch it on a Friday night with a group of friends, you could do a lot worse. I mean, there are some moments that I thought were very, very good. Atmospherically, it's absolutely fantastic, but I just felt as though, as I said, that B-grade sort of made-for-TV feel that the film has prevents it from elevating itself to the levels that movies of similar kind managed to do as far as French cinema is concerned in this period of time. And so overall, this is a movie that will make you think. It's a movie that you will admire the abilities used by the director, but it's just, as I said, it has that slight disposable feel that makes it a little bit disappointing. So overall, I still recommend it, especially if you're a fan of French horror. I'm going to give Malefique 3 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies and I'll see you later.